we can talk about the Eames Intermediate Chair, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 examples of the Eames Intermediate Chair. And these are actually fell-bound production. I can tell that. At least this one is because of this, and this one is because of the chrome.
This one, the first is 1268, and the second one 1313/6.
And this one's American production. It's 1269. So let's talk about the American one because I'm most familiar with it. So 1958, they do the Eames Aluminum Group, and time is going on. Herman Miller is constantly pressuring the Eames office. We need new stuff. We need new stuff. Consumers need new stuff. So 1961, they had done the Time Life Lobby Chair, which is an expensive product, but a really high-end chair for a high-end client. And they keep working on different things. And between the Time Life chair and the Eames soft pad chair, in between the two, they develop what is called the Eames Intermediate Chair. And this is an example of this. And it's easy to see why this is an orphan product in the Eames line, because unlike almost every other furniture product, the Eames Intermediate Chair is not a system. There's only one configuration of a chair that you can make out of the Eames Intermediate Chair. You can make it with or without arms, and you can make it with or without casters. Probably the most significant thing about the Eames Intermediate Chair is that for the Eames Intermediate Chair, they've gone one step beyond the base that they developed for the Time Life Chair. And for the first time, we meet the Eames Universal Base. And it's introduced with the Eames Intermediate Chair. And Herman Miller and Vitra still make the Eames Universal Base today. It's an interesting, attractive chair. They're super comfortable. I mentioned to you when we looked at the one in Charles's office that Charles had a prototype because the production models have leather on the arms. Mm-hmm. As you can see.
And the one in Charles' office
was all aluminum, yeah.
No, it had black arms, no?
Oh, just black arms, yeah. The ones that were sold to the public had either leather here or Girard upholstery. It's also, in terms of being a direct design, it's not particularly direct. Oops. Sorry.
Shock.
They have to thread this thing through the back. It's the opposite of being natural. It's kind of a little bit Rube Goldbarb-esque, where this is threaded through here. It looks like on the European production, the antler is separate. On the American ones, if I remember, no, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. This back antler has to be screwed in, and you got to drill this for this, and it's a very complicated chair. Now, in America, there is a fun Eames feature, which is they've gotten away from the old gimbal basic tilt swivel mechanism to this, which is a lot more reliable and longer lasting. While I've seen plenty of the basic ball and gimbal tilt mechanisms freeze and break over the years, this kind I've never seen break. Now this came as a off-the-shelf part from the manufacturer. What the Eames office designed were these nifty polished aluminum caps. This was an Eames office addition to a part that was supplied by the factory. The other thing that's fun is in America, talking about direct and straightforward, the torsion device is a piece of raw iron that has just been torqued. And then the Eames office designed this solid cast aluminum leg. Here we see the Eames principle. The details are not the details. They came up with this egg-shaped aluminum, but I've always been charmed by this simple piece of torqued steel on the American production. In terms of making a complete design, Charles and Ray said they always did a complete design. On your typical product, including high-end Knoll furniture, the underside of the furniture is unfinished and there's just some burlap to keep the foam in. Well, if on an Eames chair, if the top is tufted, the bottom's tufted. Here, where nobody's going to see it unless they get on their hands and knees, they've hand tufted the buttons on the underside. It's a fabulous feature. So they're tufted here and tufted there, same with the back. And that's an expensive thing to do. And we know from DJ Dupree's memories of the time, he got a phone call from Charles, and Charles said, "Do you have any people up in Michigan who know how to hand tuft a chair?" Because Charles didn't want to design it in if there weren't workers who knew how to do that. That's handwork. And, it's part of, it's the thing with the Eames designs, there's often some hand details. This one's leather, so you've got tufted leather, top and bottom. Fellbound kind of slightly, and part of it is whatever, it could be that the manufacturers in Europe couldn't torque steel. He has a slightly different torsion device.
So the Vitra version is 1268, Tanya?
I don't know that it's worse. I mean, I'm charmed by that torquing on the U.S. production, and this was just something in Europe they didn't do.
Who knows for what reason?
And to Fellbaum's credit, there was a long period of time that Herman Miller stopped making a lot of Eames designs. Fellbaum continuously kept every Eames design in production. There was never a stop with Fellbaum production. These are European. They've got the chrome, and in fact, anecdotally, I can tell you that I see more intermediate chairs in the secondary market in Europe than I do in America. In America, since 1987, I've seen maybe 3 intermediate chairs. In European sales and auction houses, I've probably seen 15 or 16. Mm-hmm. It wasn't produced very long for obvious reasons, because when in '69 they brought out the Eames soft pad group, they then had a proper system. Because the soft pad group, you get a lounge chair, you have an ottoman, you have a desk chair, you have a side chair, all off the same system. We don't need to make the intermediate chair anymore. And it wasn't called the intermediate chair because chronologically it was intermediate. It was called the intermediate chair because it was not as pricey as the Time Life chair, mm-hmm. but it wasn't as cheap as an Eames aluminum group chair. Mm-hmm. So it was at a price point in between Eames aluminum group and the Eames Time Life group. To this day, the Time Life chairs are among the most heaviest and most expensive Eames chairs, but they were designed to be heavy and expensive because they were going to be in the lobby of a place where they get heavy daily use. People come in, sit on them every day, and also in the lobby you want to have something that announces you as a fancy company, luxury leather, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm.